Imagine realizing that your burnout or your guilt over taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon isn't a personal failure at all.
Right. It's actually the result of a cosmic lie told thousands of years ago.
Exactly, because, we are trained from childhood to view the fundamental forces of the universe like, specifically light and darkness, as a battlefield.
Yeah, a literal war.
Right. Think about every movie you've ever seen or, every foundational story. There is this baked-in expectation of an endless cosmic tug of war. Light is the hero, dark is the villain, and you are supposed to cheer for one and fear the other.
And today, we're stepping into a philosophical landscape that just completely shatters that entire framework.
We really are. We're unpacking a profoundly powerful, almost mythological text. It's simply titled, Do Not Mess with the Mother.
Such a great title.
It is, yeah. And our mission for you today on this deep dive is to explore a radical reframing of how humanity understands these forces.
And I think it's important to note right up front that the author of this text isn't just offering like a dusty ancient history lesson here.
No, not at all.
What we are looking at is a strikingly accurate diagnosis of modern anxiety. I mean, it takes this massive abstract idea of cosmology and anchors it directly in our deep reliance on external validation.
Which is so incredibly relevant right now.
Yeah. By tracking how we fundamentally misunderstood the origins of light and darkness, the text maps out exactly why modern society operates in a state of perpetual exhaustion.
I can promise you that by the time we finish unpacking this, your perspective on what is good and what is evil might be completely flipped upside down.
Absolutely.
And more practically, how you treat your own intuition and your own need to just stop producing. So let's start at the very beginning of the source material. The text opens by pulling us back to a primordial state.
Right, the original unity.
Yeah, this is long before there was like a god of light fighting a god of darkness in the sky. Long before priests or institutions or self-help gurus were needed to mediate between opposing cosmic forces.
There was simply the mother.
Exactly. And the core premise is that she held both light and darkness perfectly.
And the text draws a very specific distinction here, which I love. She didn't hold them as a contradiction.
Right.
Like, she didn't hold them as a problem that required a solution.
Yeah.
The author uses these incredibly vivid, visceral images to explain the mechanics of this unity. It says she held them, quote, as a body holds breath and bone simultaneously.
Wow, breath and bone.
Yeah, or to use another image from the text, as the ocean holds stillness and storm in the same water.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because grasping this requires a total rewiring of how you, the listener, probably view the world.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
It really is. Imagine you've grown up your whole life believing that light and darkness are two rival sports teams battling for supremacy on a field. The text is asking you to abandon that stadium entirely.
Just walk right out of it.
Yeah. Instead of rival teams, you need to view light and darkness like inhaling and exhaling. You don't root for the inhale to defeat the exhale.
That would be a terrible idea.
Right. You literally cannot have one without the other. They aren't enemies. They are the involuntary mechanics of a single living organism.
That visualization captures the mechanism perfectly. But to really make this practical, we have to redefine the terms themselves.
Because we have so much baggage with those words.
So much baggage. The text strips away centuries of it. In this original state, darkness was not synonymous with evil or danger. It was, as the author defines it, the generative void.
The generative void. I love that phrase.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Think of the womb before birth. It is the not yet. It's the concealed space where everything real is assembled before it is actually released into physical form.
So it's active, not just empty space.
Exactly. It wasn't something to be overcome or feared. It was the absolute necessary condition for anything to become real in the first place.
Which makes intuitive sense when you look at how the natural world actually operates. I mean, a seed has to germinate in the pitch black under the heavy, wet soil before it ever sees a single ray of the sun. The darkness is doing the work.
Yes. And following that logic, the text totally redefines light as well. The original light wasn't some external standard of moral goodness imposed on the world from above.
Like a spotlight from the sky.
Right. It wasn't a grade on a test. It was simply the mother's pure awareness. It was an inner radiance. The text says she was so primordially present that she illuminated whatever she turned toward, just by the sheer act of turning her attention to it.
It's a beautiful image to hold on to, one unified being breathing in and out, holding the storm in the stillness.
It's very peaceful.
It is. But a worldview where everyone has innate light and safe darkness isn't very profitable for those who want to rule, is it?
No, not at all.
The text argues that this self-sufficiency had to be dismantled. I'm trying to wrap my head around how we lost this. Did we just naturally evolve out of this holistic worldview as societies grew more complex, or does the source material suggest this was forcibly taken?
The source describes a deliberate extraction. It was a very specific historical fracture.
A fracture.
Yeah. At some point in the long human story, darkness was officially declared the enemy. It was labeled as danger, as chaos, as something wild and barbaric that had to be conquered, suppressed, and, civilized away. Meanwhile, the light was extracted from the mother. It was stripped away from her and handed to male deities, to solar gods, to sky fathers.
It's like taking the water out of the public well, bottling it up, and then making people work 60 hours a week to buy it back.
That is a perfect analogy.
You've manufactured a scarcity of something that used to be innate and free.
That is the exact mechanism at play. Light was repackaged as something that originated elsewhere. It became something that came from above, and most importantly, it became something that had to be earned.
Earned. So you're not just born with it anymore.
Right. It was no longer an innate awareness you were born with. It was a reward bestowed upon you by a higher authority, but only if you followed their rules.
And what happened to the mother in all of this?
The mother, the original source of both forces, was reduced to a mere vessel, a receptacle. She became the passive dark that just receives the active light.
Wait, I have to push back on the logic of that historical shift. Why reduce her to just a vessel?
What do you mean?
Well, if she originated both of these incredibly powerful forces, the generative void and the illuminating awareness, what does civilization actually gain by reducing her to a passive receptacle? It seems like a massive downgrade in how we understand the architecture of the cosmos.
Oh, it totally is. But it comes down to creating a system of dependency. The text explicitly calls this among the oldest and most consequential lies ever told.
A lie.
Yes. Think about the power dynamics created when you split these forces. Civilization essentially created a problem that it could then exclusively solve.
Oh, I see. Create the disease so you hold the monopoly on the cure.
Exactly. If darkness is natural rest and light is innate awareness, nobody needs a mediator. You are self-sufficient.
You don't need to buy the bottled water.
Right. But if you convince people that darkness is an evil, chaotic force constantly trying to destroy them, and that light is a sacred, scarce resource kept in the sky that they have to earn,
Then you've got them trapped.
well, now you've built the foundation for elaborate systems of hierarchy. You suddenly need institutions. You need people to seek out external authorities to grant them the light and protect them from the terrifying dark.
You become entirely dependent on the system for your spiritual and psychological survival. It's literally a protection racket on a cosmic scale,
It really is.
which means we are running our entire lives on a corrupted narrative. If this historical narrative of the passive vessel and the conquering light is a lie, we need to dig into what the mother actually is.
We do. And the text makes a massive point of redefining her true nature, moving past this idea of a passive receptacle.
So what is her true nature then?
The author makes a crucial philosophical distinction here that recenters everything. The text states that the mother does not perform balance. She is the ground in which balance becomes possible.
Meaning she isn't a juggler trying to keep light and dark in the air simultaneously.
Exactly. She is the gravity that makes the juggling possible in the first place. She is the underlying physics of the universe, not a participant in a struggle.
The definitions the author gives for her darkness and her light are so profound once you view them through that lens of gravity. They are incredibly grounded in raw human emotion rather than abstract theology.
They really are. When detailing her darkness, the text completely abandons the idea that darkness is just the absence of light. It gives it profound substance.
Like what?
It describes her darkness as the underground river, the dream space. It calls it the decomposition that makes new soil.
That's incredible.
And then it gets deeply psychological. It defines her darkness as the grief that refuses to be shortened and a protective fury that does not explain itself. It's the silence that is full, not empty.
The grief that refuses to be shortened. I mean, it's almost uncomfortable to realize that the way I judge my own bad moods or periods of mourning was programmed by someone else entirely.
Right, because we pathologize it.
Exactly. Modern society pathologizes a grief that refuses to be shortened because it's inefficient, it keeps you away from work, it stops you from consuming.
That's true.
So we are told to view that darkness as an enemy, a depression we have to fight, rather than a necessary, unrushable process of decomposition making new soil. And the text describes the light just as beautifully, doesn't it?
It does. Her light is defined as the first sight. It's the recognition that sees a child before the child even knows itself.
Wow.
It is warmth without demand. The text describes it as a creative force that does not wait for permission. It's the illumination that comes from simple, profound presence.
Just being there.
Yeah, just the sheer fact of turning towards someone and truly witnessing them without requiring them to prove their worth first.
Think about the magnitude of this for a second. Every single framework you use to understand the world, the contrast between shadow and radiance, stillness and motion, the known and the unknown, you were taught those distinctions by her because she held them together first.
Right.
It's like realizing the operating system running your entire worldview, the core code that dictates how you perceive reality, wasn't created by the brand stamped on the computer casing.
It's a completely different developer.
Exactly. It was coded by someone else entirely in the very beginning of time, and they were written completely out of the manual.
And because we are running our daily lives on a corrupted version of that operating system, there are massive systemic glitches. We are experiencing system failures on a societal level.
And this brings us to the warning, right? The title of the text, Do Not Mess with the Mother, isn't presented as a piece of dramatic poetry to sound cool.
No, the text says it is a cosmological fact. It's a literal warning.
A warning where the costs of this ancient split are playing out in our biology and psychology right now.
Yes, the text outlines the very dire consequences of this lie. When you strip darkness from her and label it evil, you lose your own biological capacity to regenerate.
Because you're afraid of the dark.
Exactly. You become terrified of your own internal depths. You start mistaking rest for failure. You look at the dissolution of a relationship or a career path, and you think it's absolute death, rather than the necessary process of making new soil.
You essentially forget how to let things die so that new things can live. Because if darkness is the villain, anytime you enter a dark period, a period of rest, of silence, of not producing, you feel like the villain has won. You feel like you are failing at being a human.
And on the flip side of that mechanism, consider what happens when you strip the light from her and hand it over to some external authority.
You lose your compass.
You lose your original internal source of illumination. You become desperately dependent on external validation for every single truth in your life.
Oh, wow.
You forget that your own intuition, that sudden sight that recognized love before it had a name or knew a situation was wrong before you had any logical proof, that came from her. It is an innate tool you were born with, and you surrender it because you were told light only comes from above.
There is this incredibly striking quote in the source material that synthesizes all of this. It says that building our societies on the erasure of the mother produces people who are, quote, lost in the dark and blind in the light simultaneously.
It's a devastating line.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, is the text literally arguing that our modern burnout, our guilt over resting, our fear of just stopping, that all of this comes directly from this ancient cosmological erasure?
Yes. The author explicitly states that this is not a warning about the past. This is a precise description of a present condition.
So it's happening right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
The psychological feedback loops we are trapped in today were set in motion by this lie. When you are taught from birth that darkness is a demon you have to outrun, you will inevitably run yourself into the ground.
Of course you will.
You will experience chronic burnout because you view the very basic human need to power down, to retreat into the void, as a moral failure. You are lost in the dark because you've been told the dark is your enemy rather than your bed.
And we are blind in the light because we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for someone else to tell us what is true, what is good, what is valuable. We don't have sky fathers in the ancient sense anymore, but we've replaced them, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. We've replaced them with modern equivalents that function exactly the same way.
We wait for a boss or an algorithm or a social media metric to bestow light upon us. You know, we post a thought or a photo and sit in the dark waiting for the algorithm to validate it.
Completely blind to the fact that we have that inner radiance built in.
Right. We only think we are illuminated when the system shines a spotlight on us.
We are exhausted and we are insecure by design. The system requires us to be exhausted so we don't have the energy to question it, and it requires us to be insecure so we keep returning to it for validation.
So I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone listening to this on their commute. You might be listening to this thinking, sure, this sounds profound, but if I just sit in the dark and let my grief be long, or if I stop seeking validation from my boss, I'll lose my job, I'll lose my livelihood.
It's a very real fear.
It is. How do we bridge this ancient cosmology with the reality of a modern Tuesday morning? If this balance was broken so long ago, and the consequences are baked into how we have to live and work today to survive, how can we possibly restore it?
The text is beautifully clear on the nature of this restoration.
Yeah.
It requires an internal paradigm shift, not necessarily an immediate external revolution.
Okay, so it's an inside job.
Yes, you do not restore the mother by building new temples or making her a figure of worship or retreating to a cave. She doesn't need to be rescued by us.
Right.
She isn't waiting for a public relations rehabilitation campaign.
Then what is the mechanism for fixing this? What is she waiting for?
She is simply waiting for the lie to be dropped. You restore her by stopping the erasure in your own mind.
So what does dropping the lie look like in actual practical terms? Based on the text, it seems like it starts entirely with how we contextualize our own internal states.
Exactly. It requires changing the vocabulary you use for your own biology and psychology. It means letting darkness be dark without instantly labeling it as evil or defective.
Right.
When you feel that protective fury the text mentioned earlier, you stop treating it like a pathology that needs to be medicated or managed away so you can be a compliant worker. You recognize it as a valid ancient force telling you a boundary has been crossed.
It's about changing the narrative of our own rest. When you need to retreat into silence, you have to recognize that the silence is full, not empty.
Exactly.
It means understanding that a refusal like saying no to more work, no to another engagement, isn't a failure of your character, it's a function of your innate mechanics.
Yes, the underground river of your own subconscious doesn't need to be bridged over or paved. It needs to be known and respected.
And regarding the light, dropping the lie means learning to be simply seen. We are so conditioned to be evaluated, managed, and improved upon.
We constantly feel like we're being graded.
We do, but you have to practice simply existing in your own pure awareness, because that is what the original light was always doing. It wasn't grading you on a curve, it was illuminating you with pure presence.
And you have to stop handing your innate light over to the algorithm or the institution and asking them to tell you if you are shining.
To synthesize the core message of this entire journey, the text insists that these forces of light and darkness were never ours to redistribute in the first place.
Never.
We, as a civilization, never actually had the authority to hand the light to the sky and banish the dark to the underworld. They were always hers. They are the origin point.
Yes.
And acknowledging that they belong to her, and by extension belong to the natural world we are part of, actually makes them fundamentally more ours than the artificial, exhausting hierarchical systems we built to replace them.
It forces a complete reassessment of power. We've traced the path from a unified primordial state where breath and bone, stillness and storm coexisted in one magnificent body, through a great historical fracture where those forces were ripped apart to create systems of control.
And that leads us to the profound realization that our modern exhaustion, our deep, bone-weary societal burnout, is tied directly to continuing that ancient lie.
It remains the most urgent instruction we have. Do not mess with the mother. Understanding this changes everything about how you view your own humanity.
He really does.
Your need for rest, for grief, for the generative void, that darkness is your birthright, and your innate, unquestionable awareness, your ability to see and be seen without needing external permission, that light is already yours.
We started this deep dive talking about a cosmic tug-of-war, that endless, exhausting battle between two opposing teams that we've all been drafted into since the day we were born. But what if you just drop the rope?
Just let it go.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over today. If you were to wake up tomorrow and truly drop this lie, if you stopped viewing your own periods of darkness, your grief, your silence, your absolute biological need for rest as a problem to be solved,
Right.
and if you stopped viewing your own light, your worth, and your truth as something you had to constantly earn from external authorities, how would the entire structure of your life change?